right, I think we're ready to get started. So thank you all so much for joining us for planting seeds and building relationships with faculty partners. My name is Kate McNally Carter. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an OER librarian at University of Houston and a member of the OEN Event Planning Committee. We're excited to dive into this topic with you today. And to begin, we want to hear a little bit from you. Bethany, another member of our OEN Event Planning Committee, is going to be dropping a Menti poll in the chat with the prompt, what are some of the biggest challenges you have all faced when initially building relationships with faculty partners? And so while we wait for answers to trickle in, first I want to go over a few housekeeping things. So I just want to remind everyone that automatic captioning is enabled, and you can access this using the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. The beginning of today's session will be recorded, and we will end the recording before our group discussion so that we can have more candid discussion at the end. We also want to propose some ground rules for today's sessions. So if you have any revisions or additions to these rules, please feel free to pop them into the chat or unmute yourself. So our first rule is be here now, avoid multitasking and take advantage of this time to connect with colleagues. Share airtime, allow everyone the opportunity to speak. Foster mutual respect, use inclusive language, be mindful of power dynamics, social, professional, or otherwise, and how they might impact the conversation. And last but not least, all ideas and questions welcome. This is a space to learn and grow, which is a vulnerable process. Assume others' positive intent and approach conversations with curiosity and openness. Okay, so now that we're all on the same page, we'll switch over to our mentee. And I apologize if you weren't able to work on this before. So if you are in the Menti, you should be able to answer this prompt. So our prompt is, what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced when trying to build relationships with faculty partners, especially in the beginning stages of building relationships with faculty partners? And thank you to Bethany for dropping the link again. All right, our first response, I think, resonates with many of us. Faculty have no time. They are busy. Yes, I think that is definitely a big hurdle that we all struggle with, getting responses, resistance to being told how to teach. Yeah, I think, yeah, that can definitely be an impactful dynamic in our relationships with faculty. They want time intensive help, one-on-one conversations, bandwidth of faculty to be able to do the work. I'm still relatively new here, so a lot of people don't know who I am or how I can help. Also, a lack of materials. They do not attend meetings or programming, lack of enthusiasm, how it will impact their promotion and tenure. I think that is a really big point. Misconceptions about OER and what it is or isn't. Publishers make it super easy to adopt their materials. That's definitely a challenge when you're trying to promote something that maybe is a little bit more time intensive, right? And then when it's not the right time for them, they may be interested, but not be able to engage or collaborate at that point of the semester, or they have other projects going on. Hard to break dependence on commercial materials, textbooks and materials. So yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a theme here with time in being able to actually, you know, get attention from faculty, misconceptions, promotion and tenure. So I think a lot of these points are definitely things that do come up again and again. So please feel free to continue responding to that Menti. So I'm going to switch screens over to our slide deck and just go over our agenda really briefly. So we'll start with a contributor panel from Teresa Schultz, University of Nevada, Reno, and Lauren Cosrow from College of DuPage. So they'll be talking from approximately 12:05 to 12:20 to discuss some of their ideas around building these relationships with faculty. Then we will break up into breakout rooms for a small group discussion between 12:20 and 12:35, so about 15 minutes. And we'll have options for you to divide up by your institution type, or we'll also have a quiet space if you prefer. We'll talk a little bit more about those logistics when we get to that point. Then we'll come back together for a community debrief at 12:35, and we'll close up around 12:50 to 12:55, so you can get onto your next thing on time. So I'm going to turn it over to our contributors now. So we'll start with Teresa.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. Just a little bit of background. So I'm at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm the Scholarly Communications and Social Sciences librarian, and I do lead our open education efforts here at the libraries. And this does include, we do have a grant program for our faculty. It's still fairly new. We're just getting ready to launch the call for proposals for our 4th cohort of the grant program. So definitely building relationships it's been a whole project and I've tried different things. So, and some have been more successful than others. I will say my kind of take, I'm very much someone who likes to do their homework, and I really want to kind of get a feel for what I'm going into before I actually do it. So I've kind of done this in different ways. I've gathered actual data. I try to get data about our classes, what is enrollment like, how much are classes offered, how many sections are offered a semester, things like that. We have been able to get data from our bookstore. So we are a Barnes & Noble's bookstore. It's not the best data, I'm not going to lie. It can be kind of messy data. It's taken a lot of time for me to go through and clean it. Sometimes it can be a little confusing. I try to look for which classes are using inclusive access, or as our Barnes & Noble calls it, first day, which ones aren't reporting any textbook to the bookstore, and then which ones are reporting like a more traditional, cost textbook. And the data definitely gets messy. You have to be a little bit careful. I found, like, if a lab or a lecture class might not report a book or any supplies, but then the associated lab class will have it. So I have to be careful about that. But it definitely kind of at least gives me a place to start from that's a little bit more knowledgeable. I also try to go to colleagues and coworkers who might also have some knowledge about various departments and colleges on campus. So I'll talk with our other liaison librarians. I've talked with instructional designers. I have even talked with library student workers. We kind of have an interesting little setup for psychology here, I found out, for the intro, the 101 course. And I knew we had a student worker who's a psychology student, so I went and kind of peppered them with questions and tried to get a feel for it. One important thing I also should mention about UNR, textbook decision-making is very decentralized here. We do have inclusive access, but it is not happening at the university level. I don't even really think it's happening at the college level. It's happening at individual departments and schools. They are making these decisions. And it's definitely made it harder for us to know what's going on, because there's no one kind of at the university level who even knows this question, like this answer. And the best I have gotten is that information from the bookstore. So it's really kind of made it a little bit of a struggle. And even again, the bookstore data is not great, because sometimes they make it look like there is a first day access for a class, but then when I've gone and talked to that instructor or like a chair, it turns out no, it's a traditional textbook. So again, it can be kind of confusing, which makes it a little bit harder, I won't lie. So really doing my homework, trying to get as much information as I can to be prepared has been a big thing for me. I also, I kind of try to see like who is best to actually reach out to faculty. Is it me, or is it someone else who might actually know them better? So we do have a committee here. We call it the Affordable Textbook Working Group. It's run by the libraries, and we do have some liaison librarians on it. We have other librarians as well, and we have people outside the libraries. And so sometimes, if I think it sounds like somebody has a really good working relationship, I might try and see, like, would you be interested in reaching out to them? This can be good. It can be not so good. Sometimes some of our librarians who are not as well versed in open education, they're willing to do it and they want to do it, but then the way they phrase the message is maybe not how I would have phrased it. And then, like the instructor, we had at least one case where the instructor is like, oh, no, no, thanks, I'm good. And part of me is like, oh, if I had done it and I had done it differently, maybe it would have gone a different way. So I think it's something to consider, who is, giving the message. It might be best coming from you if you're the most knowledgeable person and you've done the work to think about like your elevator message and your audience. But maybe that it might actually be better coming from someone who has a better relationship too. I've also tried different people of who I reach out to, again, because we're so decentralized. So some courses will, especially for the lower level introductory courses, they will use the same textbook across the board. In other cases, there's the kind of like the textbook that a committee has come up with that you've done the lesson planning for, but no one individual section is required to use it, even if like most of them do end up using it. And then we also have sections, some of my department areas, because I'm also a liaison librarian, or sociology and political science. It is absolutely different between course sections. It's each individual instructor and faculty member. It is up to them what textbook they use. So I kind of tried different ways. I've tried to reach out to individual faculty members. I've reached out, if I know there's a course coordinator, I'll try and reach out to them. I've also reached out to chairs and deans to see if I can get their support. And again, this is just kind of a mixed bag. Like some chairs are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like really encourage my faculty to do it. They'll work with their faculty. We've had some success with anthropology, for instance, doing that route. Other chairs are supportive and they're like, oh, we'll pass the message along, and that's kind of it. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and you just kind of have to go and feel, at least here, because again, we're so decentralized, it does make it a little bit harder for us. I really try and pay attention to schedules, who's teaching the class. Does it look like there's someone who regularly teaches the class? Because some departments, it changes a lot. So even if, if I see Professor X is teaching this fall, if they're not going to be teaching again, does it make sense to try and get their help? So it's really kind of making sure I'm touching as many bases as I'm able to. And then finally, it's really just not giving up. Even if I don't get a response, I can keep trying. I don't want to be a pain. I don't want to, pester people. So I'm very polite about it. And like, I'll send maybe a few emails if we're launching a new cohort of applications. And then I might reach out to them a year later when we launch another round. And so just being patient and knowing that like it might take steps to get there and you might not have success right away. But just trying to get a feel for what do they care about? And in some cases, maybe like you won't be able to help them. I've tried to reach out to our nutrition department. They really like these like paid databases, I suppose they are, that have like this complicated nutrition facts and information about them. And I haven't been able to see if there's an open education resource available that's like that. If anyone knows, let me know. But in my head, I'm like, okay, well, maybe not right now for them, but I can be on the lookout and see if there is like maybe like something that's similar to that they could use. And then I can go back to them and be like, well, here's an answer to your need, to make it easier for you. So yeah, just not giving up. All right, I think that's everything.
All right. Thanks so much, Teresa. Yeah, you touched on a lot of really great points. And I think, yeah, definitely finding that balance between keeping as much in communication with faculty, but not pestering them, and also dealing with different levels of support from them. I think that can be really, really challenging. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of good work. So now we'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon. And Teresa, I resonate with a lot of what you said. So there might be a little bit of overlap in some of our conversation and sharing of our experiences. I am the digital content and open access librarian at College of DuPage. And in my role, I serve as the co-chair of the OER steering committee. I provide leadership for our OER and textbook affordability initiatives here at the college. But I wanted to share also that I've been involved in open work for the last 10 years. And at the first institution where I worked, I was the co-chair of that OER committee and really built an OER program from the ground up. And so I've had that experience of not having a lot of institution-wide support and really starting an initiative from the very beginning in terms of reaching out to faculty, building an OER program. In my current role, I stepped into this role 2 years ago. And when I stepped into this role, it was an established program. I stepped into a program where an another librarian had done a lot of that groundwork, right, and that framework and that building. And so when she retired, I stepped into this position. So I just offer that to share that I've had two very different experiences, but what I wanted to kind of talk about and share today is where I've seen a lot of that work overlap, whether you are starting an initiative from the ground up at your institution, or whether there's an existing program and you're just looking to scale and build those faculty relationships. These are, the things that I feel like have resonated in both of my positions in engaging in this work. So the first, I think it's essential to find teaching faculty in the departments, rooted in the departments, who can be your champions and your collaborators. Again, in any of those situations, wherever you are in your open work, making those connections with teaching faculty who are already using OER and who are already championing the use of OER in their classroom. This is one of our best communicators and one of the best advocates is someone who's already doing this work and is someone who's already bought in. And so at this point, I feel like in a lot of our campuses, there are faculty who are already doing this work, right? You may not be aware of it, you may not have met them yet, but there's a very high chance that there are faculty who have written their own materials, right? Or have engaged in adopting an open textbooks. So partnering with them, establishing a great relationship, and maybe doing some joint PD, right? Where they share their experience and they're able to speak to their other colleagues across campus of their why, how they did it, and how they first got involved, and the impact it's had on their teaching practice. Again, one of the best ways to kind of start to snowball that effort on campus. So finding those champions, finding those collaborators, and making those connections. Also, this kind of early communication around the why, and potentially starting to build some evidence of return on investment where faculty are choosing OER, their students are saving dollars spent on commercially published materials. Finding those faculty early and starting to talk and communicate the ROI of OER work can be really helpful to build momentum, particularly when you're communicating with kind of key stakeholders, whether that's administration, board of trustees, senior leaders, whatever that might be. So making those connections early can be really helpful. The second one I have on here is really embracing the relational aspect of this work. And I found in both positions, whether you're starting from the ground up or in an established program, this work I have found to be highly relational. And so this is connecting with faculty, getting invited to department meetings and small talking before or after the meeting. A lot of my great connections have come for just hallway conversations where I've sent out an email and then someone stops me walking in the hallway and wants to have a 5-minute chat about a potential project they're interested in. I found that my most productive conversations don't actually come when I host a PD session. It's the post PD session conversation. So I'll host a PD, I'll be talking for 50 minutes, right? No one's asking questions. And then the PD ends and I have the most productive and engaging conversations, because then, the faculty member approaches me or hangs out in the Zoom meeting longer. Hey, I want to talk to you about this idea, or this made me think of this. Those are connections and those moments are invaluable. I've also found that some of my best connections come from, like, if you have a faculty in service, when you come back for the spring semester, you have, 2 or 3 days of PD for faculty. The lunches, right? The coffee breaks, like those are the times when I connect with people and are able to have these conversations, not only to talk about my work and what I'm doing, but what resonates with them and what they might be interested in engaging with. The second piece of this that I think is really important is kind of investigating this work, or seeing how this work on campus can be a team-based approach. So whether that is faculty teams, right, talking to their the other colleagues in the department and approaching projects as a team, which sometimes is less intimidating than if you're going to do a project on your own, but also building your own support systems in this work. I saw on the Mentee that, there's a couple comments about really time intensive or needing a lot of support. And yes, that is true, right? When they're encountering new projects for the first time or engaging in something, they need that support. But you don't necessarily have to be the only person, especially if you're building your team of support. So whether that's an instructional designer on your campus, right? Whether that's your library colleagues, others on campus who are passionate about this work and who can also support faculty, is really helpful to kind of building that team-based approach. So not only relational within faculty, but also your own connections on campus to help support those faculty in the shared goal. And then finally, I just put on here to be clear on your why, right? Why you're passionate about this work and why you're engaging in this work, but to craft your message for your specific audience. And so, there's many things that make OER, right, really impactful on campus, from the student savings to access to materials on day one, so no students are falling behind because of financial barriers, but also the academic freedom that it affords faculty to teach their course outcomes, make the curriculum more inclusive and equitable for all of our students. So those are all reasons to engage in OER, and I'm sure we can come up with 10 more. But the audience and who you're speaking to at a particular moment, craft your message, right, for your audience. So maybe when you're talking to senior leadership, it's about the student savings. It's about that money then being able to go to tuition, right? If students are able to enroll in more courses because they're not spending money on textbooks. But maybe to a faculty member, it is the student savings. Maybe it's the access to materials on day one, but maybe it's really about them being able to curate academic materials or course materials for their class. And it's really kind of living into the full academic freedom that they get for their course. So again, that message can be crafted and shifted depending on your audience. And I found that to be extremely valuable and helpful in how I communicate to different stakeholders on campus. So I want to be mindful of time. I'll stop there, but looking forward to discussing and chatting a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you to both of you for sharing your experience with the group. I think these are really, really important points, and I think we definitely have a lot of opportunity to delve into them a little bit further. So we're going to stop recording the session so that we can give our attendees a chance to share their thoughts